Thank you so much to Reverend Professor Lee for his kind invitation. My message is entitled, "The Idea of a University, the Meaning of a Christian Education." Our New Testament text that you heard is the Gospel of St. John, chapter 8, verses 31 to 32, including Yonsei's motto, "And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." This was also, in the Latin, Veritas vos liberabit, the motto of my graduate school in the US, the Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, Maryland. It may surprise you to hear that I gave my first chapel sermon at the age of 18, in my final year of high school. My speaking in chapel reflected the fact that all my own education was Christian. My primary, secondary, and tertiary educational institutions were all founded on Christianity, like Yonsei. They were all actually traditional Anglican institutions. That is, they were built upon the foundations of the Church of England, called the Anglican tradition. I would like today to offer some illustrations from my own experiences to illustrate how a Christian education can still inspire us here at Yonsei. I was blessed to receive my primary and secondary schooling in the Royal County of Berkshire, a historic district of southeastern England to the west of London. From the age of 7, I attended Haileybury Junior School in Windsor, where I could look up at the ancient castle, the largest of its kind in the world, constructed after the Norman conquest over 900 years ago. It is still a favorite residence of the monarch. Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, like all monarchs since the Reformation, is supreme governor of the Church of England. Haileybury was a very traditional British boarding school in the Harry Potter style, minus the witchcraft and indeed minus the girls. The traditional Anglican ethos was emblazoned on our ties in our school motto, "Fear God, honor the King," 1 Peter 2:17. The headmaster, Reverend Philip Llewellyn Morgan from Wales, was an Anglican pastor who continued the 19th century tradition of muscular Christianity, embodied in daily chapel services and playing rugby. I was blessed especially to be taught by the last representatives of the greatest generation, which is the one that lived through World War II. Two of my favorite teachers, or masters as we called them at Haileybury, were Mr. Sandham, who fought in the British Royal Marine Commandos in World War II, one of the world's most elite regiments, and Mr. Boardman, who still wore the traditional British gentleman's moustache of a man who had served his country in the Royal Air Force in the Second World War. As Sir Winston Churchill said of the pilots who fought the Battle of Britain, "Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few." Being a student at a school that inculcated moral values, including service to others, one's community, and one's nation, was an immense blessing. I thank my parents for making the sacrifices to ensure that I could receive this Christian education. From the age of 13 to 18, I was a pupil at Bradfield College in the beautiful countryside of Berkshire. This was a boarding school founded in the 1850s by Reverend Thomas Stevens, who was both the parish priest and lord of the manor of Bradfield, a village recorded in the Domesday Book in 1086. My school's Latin motto is "Benedictus es o Domine, doce me statuta tua," meaning, "You are blessed, Lord, teach me your laws." Chapel service was compulsory several times a week at Bradfield, as was attendance at Holy Communion on Sundays. You get off very lightly in comparison at Yonsei. This links to my undergraduate education at the University of Oxford, motto Dominus Illuminatio Mea, in Latin, or "The Lord is my light," Psalm 27. I attended Keeble College, where I studied history. Keeble College was founded in 1870 in memory of the Reverend John Keble, 1792 to 1866, the son of a rural parish priest who became professor of poetry at Oxford. His poems on the Church of England prayer book liturgy, The Christian Year, published anonymously in 1827, went through 158 editions and had sales of nearly 400,000. His Oxford lectures, De Poeticae Vi Medica, The Healing Power of Poetry, were not so widely read, being in Latin. Keeble's emphasis on the historical continuity of Anglican tradition is shown by his edition of Richard Hooker's Of the Laws of Ecclesiastical Polity, 1593, the classic defense of the Anglican via media, middle road, as a moderate theological path between counter-Reformation Roman Catholicism and the Reformed Protestantism of John Calvin's followers. He served on the committee of the Library of Anglo-Catholic Theology, which reprinted texts by 17th century priests such as Lancelot Andrewes, supervisory translator of the Authorized Version of the Bible, 1611. The beautiful language ensured that the King James Bible shaped the culture of the English-speaking peoples more than any text in history. Newman's impact on the university in the 19th century resonates down to us due to his educational philosophy, grounded in the twin pillars of Western thought, the Judeo-Christian and the Greek-Roman classical traditions. This was enabled by the quality of his writing. For Newman, as for the faculty here at Yonsei, writing must have a crucial place at the very heart of the college curriculum. Ian Kerr, author of The Life of Newman in the Oxford Dictionary of National Biography and editor of the Oxford University Press edition of Newman's Idea of a University, calls Newman the most significant Roman Catholic theologian of the 19th century and one of the great Victorian prose writers. Newman was born in the City of London, incorporating London's financial district and the stock exchange. His father was a banker. His childhood was shaped by a deep economic depression that followed the Napoleonic Wars in Europe. We can see parallels with our own time in the 2008 financial crisis and the current economic impact of COVID-19. At 15, influenced by a teacher, he embraced evangelicalism. The next year, he went up to Trinity College, Oxford. He won a prestigious scholarship there. I hope you will be comforted to hear, at least if your grades have not always been what you wished for, that his final graduating examinations at Oxford were a total disaster. He failed outright in mathematics and scored the worst possible passing grade in classics, Greek, Latin. He was predicted to receive the highest ranking in Oxford in both subjects, but failed due to exhaustion from excessive studying. Yes, he studied too much. Some of you will no doubt find your academic life often very stressful and challenging. I want to share with you here in our chapel service that you should not fear failure or expect only success in life, though. Even professors don't succeed in everything, including academics. I can tell you this from personal experience. Although I have been blessed to receive many positive results academically, I have also experienced disappointments, as I'm sure most of you will experience at some point if you have not done so already. In my national examinations at the end of high school in the UK, ironically, I received a B grade overall in my own favorite subject of history. I was bitterly disappointed and felt that I had been treated unfairly by the examiners. In retrospect, my results simply reflected my unwillingness to write essays in the way that national examiners expected. I answered questions by showing off rather than sticking closely to the specific topic assigned. Fortunately, I had already passed the Oxford entrance interviews and been admitted to the college that I wanted to study at. So my stubborn refusal to adapt and conform did not disqualify me. It did bruise my pride, but not deeply enough to teach me humility, which has continued to plague me, as you will hear. I experienced disappointment also when I applied to graduate school in the US to do my PhD. The first time that I applied, I missed out on the scholarship to study at my top choice, Johns Hopkins, and was ranked as the first reserve. I took another year, applied again, and was able to get in the second time with a full scholarship. Now, I can look back and reflect that this actually gave me a precious opportunity to mature and learn from the experience of initial disappointment. But at the time, I had no such thought. I must confess to you that I am still working on perseverance and on the gratitude to stand before you. My friend and mentor from church told me last month that I need to display humility after he had read my recent research proposal. Deep down, I know this, but too often I don't practice saying thank you for the hard knocks life has given me. Without being grateful for opportunities to learn and to change, humility has no soil to grow in. Failures or disappointments, such as missing out on the grades we think we deserve, can be a blessing in disguise and an opportunity for us to learn more deeply. Some think that Christianity promises us protection from life's hard knocks, or indeed, even that it guarantees Christians prosperity. I am not one of them. Following Christ does not mean that we avoid pain, suffering, or disappointment. Let me share with you a personal experience of fear and hardship. A little over 2 years ago, I went through a very sudden and frightening medical condition. I suffered literally overnight what doctors call a central retinal vein occlusion. I had a major blood clot and bleeding inside my left eye. I woke up and my vision was completely blurred. When I went to the international clinic at Severance, they rushed me immediately to see the professor of ophthalmology. My eyesight was 0.1 on the Korean scale that goes to 1.5. I had lost more than 90% vision. In fact, I could not see the chart on the wall, let alone identify correctly numbers or letters. Now, I stand here and my eyesight has recovered completely, 100%. The spectacles I am wearing are exactly the same prescription lenses as I had before my blood clot in 2017. Whilst being a Christian does not mean that we'll be free from illness or hardship, it gives us a spiritual community to support us in times of trial. I am hugely thankful that I was seen by world-class medical faculty at Severance. I am also deeply grateful for the legacy of those Christian missionaries who came to Korea more than a century ago and devoted themselves to the healing and salvation of the Korean people. When I had my blood clot and was blinded overnight in my left eye, I was afraid. I am not John Henry Newman. I am not a saint. I did not simply trust in God. When the professor at Severance told me his diagnosis of a central retinal vein occlusion, I froze. I almost fainted and fell off my chair in front of the screen showing the tortuous veins and the blood inside my eye. I was in shock. I was afraid mainly for my family, as I had 2 young children to look after. My son Johan was then only just 5 years old, and my daughter Hannah was only 3 years old. A central retinal vein occlusion has a very bleak prognosis for long-term recovery of sight. When I had an eye test in the UK last summer, less than 2 years after my blood clot, the optician was astonished when I told him that I had suffered a central retinal vein occlusion. The results of my eye test at the same place near my hometown were exactly the same as they had been before it happened. Being a Christian does not mean we will always be healthy or happy. Being a Christian meant, though, that my family and spiritual community prayed for me. I thank God for my healing and for the opportunity to share with you here in chapel. You may be surprised to hear a professor say to you, "Don't work too hard." But university education is not only, or even primarily, about grades or the results of examinations. I am not arguing that you should not try to achieve the best you can. Of course you should. It is called integrity. What I mean is that grades are not the only standard by which you should be judged, or, more importantly, by which you should judge yourselves. We are our own best critics. Aside from the Lord, who has given us our individual talents and intellects, only we really know what we are capable of achieving. I believe that each of you should have a well-rounded university experience and broad outlook, a way of viewing the world and of your own place in it that is not simply grades on a transcript. Newman, like his friend Keble, viewed the university as a spiritual community. This is embodied in our chapel, where we come together as a community in worship and Christian fellowship. We at Yonsei, through our teaching and research, participate in the free exchange of ideas. Out of that free exchange comes the truth. As our biblical motto professes, the truth will make you free. Newman, like Keble, in whose spiritual honor my undergraduate college at Oxford was founded, emphasized the pastoral role of university faculty. A university professor has a duty, a vocation, to act as a mentor to students. The ultimate goal of that mentoring relationship is for our students to evolve into a thoughtful person, one capable and willing to make decisions, intellectual and moral, and to take individual responsibility. As a graduate of Yonsei University, who has received the privilege of such an education, you are never alone. You remain part of our community, the spiritual family that is Yonsei. Like my own previous institutions of learning at Haileybury Junior School, Bradfield College, and Keeble College, Oxford, Yonsei is a family that shares the common experience of education as a mission to seek and to communicate to the world the truth. For a Christian such as myself, and this was certainly so for Newman, the ultimate truth is the saving grace of belief in Christ's redeeming sacrifice for us. St. John encapsulated this in our university motto. For Christians, lasting and real freedom is achieved through faith in Christ. Atheists often claim a tension between Christianity and the mission of education in the modern world. Even before he became a Roman Catholic in 1845, Newman addressed this supposed tension or contradiction of faith and reason. I recommend also the extraordinary insights of the late Pope John Paul II in his 1998 encyclical Fides et Ratio. This begins, quote, "Faith and reason are like two wings on which the human spirit rises to the contemplation of truth. and God has placed in the human heart a desire to know the truth. In a word, to know himself, so that by knowing and loving God, men and women may also come to the fullness of truth about themselves." End quote. Like Pope John Paul II, Newman rejected the misconceived opposition of faith and reason. It was Newman's sophisticated epistemology, his philosophy of knowledge, laid out in his Oxford sermons between 1839 and 1841, that provided the basis of his educational philosophy. In 1851, Ireland's senior archbishop asked Newman to lead a new Catholic university in Ireland. In the spring and summer of 1852, Newman delivered his Discourses on the Scope and Nature of University Education. These were the basis of his 1873 book, The Idea of a University. Newman defended his educational values against both utilitarian secularists and anti-intellectual Christians. He argued that there is no necessary conflict between science and religion, which are rather different but potentially complementary ways of understanding the world. Like Newman, I reject an anti-intellectual approach to Christianity. Yonsei clearly embodies the truth that Christianity is perfectly compatible with deep learning and a commitment to intellectual progress. I believe the great challenge we face here at Yonsei and in universities around the world is a narrowly utilitarian conception of education. Many students and parents see university as simply a means to an end, a job that leads to wealth. In contrast, my own views are in line with those in Newman's fifth discourse in The Idea of a University, entitled Knowledge, Its Own End. Newman rebutted a narrowly utilitarian view of university education and emphasized the cultivation of the intellect as an end which may reasonably be pursued for its own sake. He went on, "Truth of whatever kind is the proper object of the intellect. How can one know the truth? Such a power is the result of a scientific formation of mind. It is an acquired faculty of judgment, of clear-sightedness, of sagacity, of wisdom, of philosophical reach of mind, and of intellectual self-possession and repose. This process of training by which the intellect, instead of being formed or sacrificed to some particular or accidental purpose, some specific trade or profession or study or science, is disciplined for its own sake, for the perception of its own proper object and for its own highest culture, is called liberal education, Newman argued. And to set forth the right standard, and to train according to it, and to help forward all students towards it according to their various capacities, this I conceive to be the business of a university. As a result of a university education, which Newman, like Yonsei, grounded in the liberal arts, quote, a habit of mind is formed which lasts through life, of which the attributes are freedom, equitableness, calmness, moderation, and wisdom. This is the main purpose of a university in its treatment of its students, end quote. I have focused on university education as we are in Yonsei Chapel. The university is only one site of our education, however. The most important is the home. My Old Testament quote to share today is Proverbs chapter 22, verse 1. A good name is rather to be chosen than great riches, and loving favor rather than silver and gold. My mother, who transmitted to me our family's Christian faith in the Scottish Presbyterian tradition, wrote this for me in the front of the Bible that she gave me as a child, as the inspirational text that I should live my life by. My mother did not go to university, but she did more than anyone to influence my life. Sadly, she passed away soon after I came to Yonsei. I know she would be thankful that I have the opportunity to share with you a passage of the Holy Scriptures that meant so much to her and to me. John Henry Newman sought the truth all his life. The Latin phrase, ex umbris et imaginables in veritatem, out of shadows and phantasms into the truth, is inscribed on his memorial tablet in England. We here in 21st century Yonsei should still admire the devotion and insights of someone dedicated throughout his life to expanding the human mind and to promoting the genuine flowering of the human heart through the unity of faith and reason achieved in the tradition of a Christian university education. I pray that the Lord will continue to bless all our efforts to seek the truth that will make us free. Amen.